Hello everyone, back to today's second video. Going to have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days. For today's second video, it's going to take us to around the 17th of December, so going to take us into the second half of the month. We'll be able to extend out a little bit beyond that in terms of the GFS, which runs to around 2 weeks, of course. At the end of the video, I'll show you a very exclusive chart that I saw on Twitter, so I can show you it, but generally it's not available. It's the ECMWF 46-day anomaly chart for week 6. I'll talk about that at the end of the video. It's a little bit complicated, but it's generally restricted. However, a pro meta shared that chart on Twitter, and so it's publicly available, so I can show you that, and that'll be at the end of the video. Right, so just say that the first video up today was the JMA Friday, of course, the month ahead look ahead. So that takes us just about to the start of the new year, actually. We're going to the first days of 2019 with that update. And it looks like it'll be a pretty wild December to come with a lot of wet and windy weather. It looks like it will be a December to remember, but perhaps from a rainfall perspective rather than cold. But anyway, have a look at JMA Friday and see what's going on. This video will pick up that storyline, and we'll have a look at weather next week to 10 days, which I'm sure you can see from that ensemble that you'll start off with very shortly. It is looking like it's going to be a really wet, it looks like it'll be a really wet period coming up, so I'll get on that for you right now. So we're going to start off by having a look at the GFS ensembles. We're looking at Exeter, home of the UK Met Office today. So the red line here is, of course, the 30-year upper air temperature average for Exeter. And we're starting off a little bit cooler today. The temperature is going to lift up a bit over the next 24 hours. It's going to be fairly mild tomorrow. Going to be cooler again as we get through to the end of the weekend and start of next week. Then we've got a bit of a push up in the temperature for the early part of next week. That was not on the cards at all 2 or 3 days ago. So early next week, actually, it's going very mild again. Before after that, it looks like we're just going to go close to average. Certainly no sign of anything particularly cold. No sign of anything very mild either. Maybe a milder period just there might be showing up around the 15th. It just looks like temperature's going to be quite close to average, rather up and down. I suspect there is a zonal sine wave that's going on here where we're bringing in warmer and cooler and warmer and cooler sectors. It sounds like it should average out at around average, but at this time of year, zonality will always bring milder than average temperatures, primarily due to the fact that nights tend to be mild, there tend to be wind blowing, bands of rain and showers coming through, so that stops the temperature going below freezing. To get cold temperature anomalies at this time of year, really you need nighttime frost. So you average it all out, and although you're bringing in warmer and cooler sectors, averaging it out, you tend to come out milder than average. The main story, though, I think, is going to be rainfall. So I've had a bit of a deluge already today. Most parts of the country woke up to a proper wet and windy morning. Going to be more rain to come tomorrow. Maybe do get a couple of drier days, Sunday, Monday, possibly freeze days lasting to Tuesday. But after that, just look at all these precipitation spikes coming through. It does look very wet. You might even say exceptionally wet, actually. It looks like we're in for a real deluge there through the middle part of December, and possibly even lasting into the second half of the month. Now, of course, it's been very dry, so let's say we do need the rain. I mean, it's important that we get sustained rain. I know it's not what a lot of you watching want, because a lot of you that are watching this want it to be cold, and if it's cold, it will tend to be dry. Any precipitation does fall tends to be snow, of course, but snow never amounts up to the same amount of precipitation as rain does, or very rarely anyway. There was a winter of 1947 which was very snowy, and that was a very wet winter overall, but all of the precipitation was snow, if you know what I mean. But generally, if it's a colder winter, it will be a drier winter, and we've had such a prolonged run of dry weather that we do need to start making up some of that rainfall terms of the rivers and reservoir levels. It looks like we're certainly going to be doing that through the middle part of December But of course, if it's wet, then it will tend to be reasonably mild. But I think rain will probably be the story going into the middle and second half of the month. I wouldn't be totally ruling out the chance of some localised flooding in some places by the time we get through to the second half of December. That looks a really, really wet ensemble. Do bear in mind that's Wrexham, so it's down in the southwest. It's exposed to those bands of rain coming in from off the Atlantic, so it won't be as wet as that in eastern parts of the country. But it is a signal that we are like to be in for quite a spell of wet weather. So, excuse me, temperature anomalies are coming out above average for the UK and for most parts of Europe as well from the 7th to the 15th of December. A few days ago, it looked like we'd probably get a colder than average week next week, but that's gone now, that prospect. The Scandinavian high, as we said yesterday, it's going to be there. It's going to form. The high pressure is going to form over Scandinavia, but it's not going to be strong enough to hold off these westerly winds and these areas of low pressure. So it will have an impact, though. And one of the reasons that this is so wet, got so much rain coming up next week, one of the reasons is that the Scandinavian high will be blocking the progress of those areas of low pressure to some degree, and their weather fronts will be slowing down over the country. So although we won't get wind into the east next week, the Scandinavian high will still have an effect, and the effect will be to make us even wetter, probably across most parts of the country. Precipitation anomalies, you'll not be surprised to see, are coming out above average for most parts of the country, above average rainfall from the 7th to the 15th of December. So this is Monday, and we are under a little bit of a ridge on Monday, so Monday will bring a drier day to the start of next week. But already by Tuesday, we've got this low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic, putting this ridge under stress. Now, Tuesday was when we're going to take high pressure Scandinavia, start to turn wind into the east a few days ago, but now we just bring these bands of wet weather in from off the Atlantic. We do get that high pressure Scandinavia, though, so we've got a 1025 millibar area of high pressure over Scandinavia. It's not strong enough, though, to be warding off these deep areas of low pressure from off the Atlantic. But I say what it does do is slow up the progress of these low pressure. So this is Thursday next week, Thursday, 13th of December. We've got a Scandinavian high at 1030 millibars. We've got this deep area of low pressure crashing into the country. I think the central pressure with that is going to be going down close around 965, maybe 960 millibars. That's a really deep area of low pressure, bringing severe gales to Ireland, and also active weather fronts bring heavy rain. And as those weather fronts come up against this Scandinavian high blocking to the northeast, they'll kind of slow up across the country. So that is a recipe for a bit of a deluge across the UK, to be honest. That's kind of like what happened. Remember the very, very wet winter we had in 2013-14. It was a total deluge of a winter from start to finish, and a large part of that, particularly through the January of 2014, had quite a big area of high pressure over Scandinavia, slowing up those rain bands, and so that's the reason January 2014 was such a very wet month. It's kind of similar to that. It's not a December 2015 pattern. This is not an exceptionally mild December that we had in 2015. It's more like a January 2014. This is how things are looking on Friday. So that low pressure is really struggling to get through the country. There it is still on the eastern side. So obviously that brings a lot of wet weather Thursday to Friday next week, as this high pressure is still up there to the northeast. There's more areas of low pressure waiting winds in the Atlantic. So this takes us to Saturday the 15th, when the next battering of gales and heavy outbreaks of rain sweeps in from off the Atlantic, and then that keeps us going up to day 10, looking very unsettled. That is day 10. Monday the 17th of December, and it does look really unsettled as well. Beyond that, into extended rain, stay very unsettled, low pressure never too far away until we start to move up towards Christmas. This is Friday 21st of December, just starting to raise heights a little bit down to our southwest. As we go, as far as we can go, is to Sunday the 23rd, and by this point we're bringing up a long fetch southwesterly to southerly, so that would be wafting up very mild air, maybe 14 or 15 degrees possible there in the south and southeast on the eve of Christmas Eve. Don't be too concerned about that, though. It's a really long way out, of course, very unreliable. That was the operational GFS. This is a parallel GFS, all looking very similar, so high pressure is close to the country, excuse me, as we go through to the early part of next week. But very quickly, that high pressure is being shoved up to Scandinavia. It does form a proper Scandinavian high, but we get this deep area of low pressure sweeping in from off the Atlantic through the middle of the second half next week, bringing a battering of heavy rain and gale force winds as well. And those low pressures are being stuck very close to the country with the high pressure over Scandinavia. Its influence is not to turn us cold, but its influence is to delay the progress of these weather fronts and the areas of low pressure. So there we are, for example, on Saturday the 15th with a deep low over top of the UK, which would again bring a real deluge of wet weather across many parts of the country. That's how we look as we get to day 10, which is Monday the 17th of December, with the parallel run of the GFS looking very, very unsettled. And then this goes on into the extended range. Again, as we move up towards Christmas, there is a suggestion that we're starting to raise heights a little bit down to our south. So starting to pull up some very mild air from the southwest. Again, that's Sunday the 23rd of December, 384 hours away, so really, really unreliable. And then got the ECMWF, so that again, we have that little bit of a ridge on Monday. Still just about hanging on Tuesday, but by Wednesday it's been broken down as we go through into the second half of next week. Very unsettled weather moving in from the Atlantic, bringing lots of rain. So despite the Scandinavian high reaching 1,035 millibars as its central pressure, it's not enough to ward off the Atlantic, and we remain very, very unsettled. And that takes into the extended range as well, with low pressure just keeping going close to the country, bringing more showers along as well as rain. It's a very, very unsettled weather patterns that we're entering into for this middle phase of December. So this is how the 5-day precipitation totals are looking based on that 6 o'clock run of the GFS, and generally quite wet through most parts of the country. Some parts of northeast England, relatively dry bare at sort of 3, 4, 5 millimetres, but through the Midlands we're up to around 15 to 20 millimetres. I mean, going out to the west in the next 5 days, we're going up to around 25 millimetres, a bit more in northwest Scotland. But look what happens in the 10-day period. So the next 5 days, not too much rain really, but from days 1 to 5, not too bad, but from days 5 to 10, really does turn a lot wetter. So look at that. We see through the Midlands, much of eastern England, we're up to 50, 60 millimetres of rain. And out in the west, we're kind of like going over 100 millimetres for parts of Wales, western, southwestern Scotland, northwestern parts of England as well, very close to 100 millimetres. 100 millimetres is, 25 millimetres to an inch, so 100 millimetres is 4 inches of rain in 10 days, and that could well be enough to start causing some problems with localised flooding in a few prone areas, I would have thought. But again, bear in mind that the groundwater levels are very low, the rivers are quite low as well, so hopefully flooding won't be too much of an issue. Now, not much to get excited about if you want cold weather, it has to be said. These are pretty grim charts for the cold lovers who are watching this. So, just a few crumbs of comfort is the fact that the GFS is still hinting at a sudden stratospheric warming starting to take place later in December. This is how the operational GFS is looking in its extended range in terms of those temperatures over the stratosphere, or in the stratosphere over the North Pole. So these blue and purple colours, they are the cold temperatures at 10 HPA, which is one of the top levels of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. Look what happens as we get into extended range running up towards Christmas. We find quite a significant warming starting to take place over towards Siberia. And it's not a sudden stratospheric warming, it's not reaching that kind of level of warming, but it is a fairly pronounced warming that's beginning to take place there over Siberia as we end the GFS run on the 23rd of December. That's the operational GFS run, but look what the parallel run is doing as we get towards Christmas in the stratosphere. Again, we're starting off on the 15th of December, but as we run through, we get to the 19th, the 20th, 21st, and look at that, a very, very substantial stratospheric warming is taking place there over Siberia by the 23rd of December. When you see those red colours turning up, that tells you that you're reaching the level of temperature in the stratosphere that would be regarded as a sudden stratospheric warming if it gets to the North Pole. That's not yet in the North Pole, but it's still over Siberia, but it looks like it's heading into the North Pole. If we could run on another day or two, I suspect we would see those red colours infiltrating, or certainly orange yellow colours infiltrating into the North Pole. That looks like a very significant warming of the stratosphere starting to take place over Siberia on the 23rd of December. That's still really early as well. Normally, southern stratospheric warming start appearing within the GFS runs kind of like mid to late January, and they actually come off in early to mid-February. So it's really early in the winter to be seeing this. I think, although the easterly has failed with the Scandinavian high, I think all the signs are pointing to this being a very interesting winter from a cold perspective still. The fact that we're already trying to get Scandinavian highs going is quite unusual for December. Normally you don't get much happening over Scandinavia in terms of Scandinavian highs in December. And also the fact that we are still seeing these regular signs of a sudden stratospheric warming starting to take place even before Christmas is very, very unusual. And I've got a feeling, although December might not have much in the way of cold weather, and in the winter forecast we never really expected December to be particularly cold, I've got a feeling we're still going to get some pretty harsh winter at some point in January or maybe February. And talking of that, I'm just going to leave you with this. So this is a pro-met, Michael Ventris, who works, I think Michael works with the WSI organisation, Web Services International. And Michael was showing this on Twitter earlier on, showing comparison between CFSV2 and ECMWF weekly ensemble means, agreeing at week 6. Now, normally you can't see 500 millibar heights or mean sea level pressure anomalies from the ECMWF 30 or 42 down. So, but as Michael has shared this on his Twitter, then it is in the public domain, so I thought, why not show you this? Do give Michael Ventris a follow on Twitter. It's at MJVentris. So give Michael a follow on Twitter. So this is the ECMWF week 6 500 millibar height anomaly for the period from the 14th of January to the 21st of January. It's a long way out, but look at that. The ECM is going for a large blocking area of high pressure over Greenland and extending back into the pole, into the top of the North Pole, with an area of below average heights across Eastern America and also across Central and Northwestern Europe. That's how you get both sides of the Atlantic cold. So there's an idea that if it's cold in America, it will be mild in the UK, but you can get it cold on both sides. You can have it freezing cold in New York, you have it freezing cold in London, and how you do it is by having this large blocking area of high pressure around Greenland, and when you get that, you will bring cold air down into these parts of North America, but you also be able to bring cold air down into the north and west of Europe, and the jet stream will be on a southerly track. I would suspect, Michael doesn't state this, I've got no evidence to back it up, but I would suspect the ECM is picking up on a sudden stratospheric warming taking place either late December or early January, and that's how the blocking gets going up over Greenland. So by the middle of January, we've got very cold air into the east of America and also into western parts of Europe. So it's pretty grim times for anybody who wants cold weather at the moment. The charts aren't very inspiring, and the Scandinavian high that looked like we're going to get next week has failed. But the overall signals for this winter are still very, very interesting, and you're just going to need a little bit of patience. And I think by the time we get through to the new year, by the time we get through to January, I think we could be seeing some very significant cold weather, certainly for some parts of the Northern Hemisphere. I won't necessarily say that will impact the UK at this point, because it is possible we might get very unlucky and the blocking just sits in the wrong position to deliver us cold weather. But we would have to be very unlucky for that, I would have thought. And I've got a feeling there is a lot of winter to go. I mean, we're only on the 7th of December. We're just at the very start of the winter. And I think we've still got a lot left to play out with the winter 2018-19. Right, so that's your 2 videos for today. Tomorrow we've got weekend forecast. We'll also have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days as well. So keep checking back for all of that. I'm not sure what we're doing on Sunday because all of the long range stuff has finished now, but there were videos. So I might do an ensembles watch. I know a lot of you like an ensembles watch, so we might do that on Sunday evening, and then earlier in the day possibly we'll just do a week to 10 day video update, something like that. But 20 minutes, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.